The brain, how does it work? Hello, I'm Christopher, welcome to my channel. First of all, leave your like and subscribe to my channel to continue receiving the videos automatically and for YouTube to understand that this content is useful to other people. So let's go. The brain is a complex organ with an exciting function. Thanks to the brain, we can carry out actions as diverse as thinking, speaking, writing, remembering, dancing, breathing, dreaming. When there is some kind of deterioration in the brain, many of these activities can be affected. But how is this detected? How are the brain and related diseases studied? How does our brain work? Through the senses, the brain receives an enormous flow of information from the world around us, processes and gives meaning, organizes and controls movement. In addition, among the functions of the brain are also those of regulating body temperature, blood circulation, breathing and digestion. When we make decisions and experience emotions, a complicated mix of chemical and electrical processes takes place in the brain. Parts of the brain. The brain consists of three major areas: the cerebrum itself, the cerebellum, and the brainstem. 1. Brain. The cortex or cerebral cortex is the outer surface of the brain and is very large, roughly equivalent to 1 or 2 sheets of newspaper. It is contained in the skull thanks to numerous folds and crevices. Only a third of the cortex is exposed superficially, the rest is hidden deep in the sulci. This way, space is used much better than if the cortex were flat, and it allows different regions of the brain to communicate more quickly and easily, as they are closer together. The cortex forms part of what is known as gray matter, which is a component of brain tissue made up primarily of the bodies of neurons. Below the cortex we find the white matter, formed by nerve extensions covered with myelin, the insulating substance that gives them their white color, that transmit information to the different regions of the brain, like cables that connect different neurons so that they can communicate with each other. The brain is divided into 2 large parts, the right and left hemispheres, which are connected to each other by a set of fibers, which constitute the corpus callosum. Each of the hemispheres has 4 lobes: frontal, parietal, temporal and occipital. And each lobe contributes differently to different brain functions. For example, approximately, the occipital lobe is essential for processing visual information. The parietal, among other things, is critical in integrating different types of sensory information to guide our movements. The temporal helps us make sense of sensory, auditory, and visual information and enables many language-related processes. The hippocampus is located in this lobe, which plays a crucial role in learning and memory and is affected by the early neuropathological changes of Alzheimer's disease. And finally, the frontal acts like an orchestra conductor to plan and execute our actions based on the information it receives from different regions of the brain and also participates in the production of language. Furthermore, in the deepest part of the hemispheres, we find several nuclei of neuronal bodies with specific functions that, like the cortex, are also part of the gray matter. Some of the most important are the basal ganglia and the thalamus, which, among other things, are involved in functions related to processing sensory and motor information. 2. Cerebellum. The cerebellum, located at the back and bottom of the skull, plays a key role in maintaining balance and in the coordination and precision of movements. 3. Brainstem. At the base of the skull is the brainstem, which connects the brain to the spinal cord and controls automatic bodily actions such as heart rate, blood pressure, and breathing, as well as voluntary movement of the eyes, tongue, and muscles. The face, among others. The brain is part of the central nervous system. The central nervous system has, in addition to the brain, other fundamental parts, such as the spinal cord, which communicates the brain with the rest of the body, transferring nerve impulses from different areas of the body and sending signals and orders from the brain to different regions of the body. Often, however, the spinal cord produces an action by itself, without the information being transmitted to the brain. It is what we know as reflexes. For example, when we quickly remove our hand from the fire so as not to burn ourselves, the spinal cord acts reflexively in response to this emergency situation. Communication between neurons. What are synapses? Neurons or nerve cells are the fundamental units of the brain and nervous system. They are responsible for receiving sensory information from the outside world, as well as sending orders to different parts of the body and transforming and transmitting the electrical signals that allow it. They come in different shapes and sizes, but all consist of three elementary parts: the cell body or soma, the axon, and the dendrites. In the cell body is the nucleus, which contains the DNA, and is where proteins are formed. The axon is the wire-like part of the cell that carries electrochemical messages. Dendrites or nerve branches are short projections of the cell, like branches, that make connections with other cells. Dendrites receive messages through neurotransmitters released by the axons of other nerve cells. In the initial part of the axon of a neuron, where it joins the neuronal body, an action potential is generated, a brief electrical impulse that travels along the axon and causes the release of neurotransmitters. They are like messengers, at the synapse, the point where this action occurs. Release and reception of the message by another neuron, thus allowing communication between them. In addition to neurons, nervous tissue contains another type of cell that forms the so-called neuroglia, whose function is to support nerve cells, provide them with the necessary nutrients for proper functioning and defend nervous tissue from viruses or other microorganisms. To avoid dying itself, neurons, with the help of neuroglia, need to constantly maintain and remodel themselves. If the cleaning and repair of cells slows down or stops for any reason, the neuron cannot function properly and eventually dies. Undoubtedly, it is not the same to eat what we like than to eat what suits us. And yet, when it comes to learning, many students tend to confuse the way they like to study with the way that will bring them the best results: reading and rereading, putting on music, revising, how the brain learns, what mechanisms, what neurotransmitters, and what circuits are involved, as well as the actions and circumstances, internal and external, that favor longer-lasting learning. If you liked it, then share it with your friends and family who might be interested. Your opinion is very important to us. So leave your comment.